Welcome to the France 24 debate. It's been described as the mother of all deals, but will the accord struck between the EU and India lead to a wider sense of a happy family? The signing took place with predictable and some might say justifiable fanfare. The headline is that it's a free trade festival, 20 years in the planning. Clear and present opportunities for business to go back and forth. In this debate, we'll be discussing the plan, analysing the opportunities and trying to shine a light on any possible threats. In a world where local production is often bragged about by the politicians, does a multilateral accord represent a threat to local business? One thinks of the scenes of French farmers protesting over the EU deal with South America's Mercosur, for instance, all very fresh in our minds. The panel for this debate, let me introduce them to you. Joining us from Brussels is Sandro Gozzi, an MEP from the Renew Europe Party. Sandro, as always, great to see you. In Trivandrum is Chukuridan Viramani, Professor and Director of the Centre for Development Studies, joining us there by teams. On set here in the studio, Andrei Luxkrung-Pietri, who's President of the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. Andrei, as always, great to have you with us. Parinji Bharat is an Indian journalist and broadcaster joining us here for the first time. Great to see you too. And Kumar Ananda, last but definitely not least, the President of France-India Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As you see, we have a packed panel of interesting people with lots to say. But first, let's set the scene. This report from Oliver Farry and Simon Moritz.
Narendra Modi calls it the mother of all trade deals, though it's starting off from a very low base. Trade between the EU and India stood at €120 billion in 2024, and while the EU is Delhi's largest trading partner, accounting for 11.5% of its commerce, India ranks only 9th among the EU's trading partners, well behind countries such as the UK, Switzerland and Norway. European businesses will see a growing economy in the world's most populous nation opening up to them. Among the beneficiaries will be Europe's auto sector, with tariffs on car imports from the EU to be slashed from a current 70 or 110% to 40%, which over time will be reduced to 10%. India will also be gaining greater access to European markets for its main exports, such as textiles, jewellery, machinery and appliances, chemicals and base metals. And access to India's raw materials is a strategic boon for European countries. The deal is part of Europe's de-risking strategy to avoid over-dependence on trade with China and will also provide new options in the uncertain world of Donald Trump's tariffs. Negotiators will spend several months finessing the details in certain critical areas, with the final agreement set to be signed by the end of the year.
So, as we say, the signing is a long process. It's going to be concluded by the end of the year. Let's hope the same pen is being used. Otherwise, it mightn't count. Let's bring in Sandro, our MEP. Can you hear us, sir? I know you're joining us from Brussels, standing up there. Sandro Gozzi, MEP for Renew Europe. How are you feeling about this accord? Is it as positive as people hope it will be?
It is an excellent deal. It is an excellent decision. I don't know if it is the mother of all deals, like Prime Minister Modi said. It is certainly a major strategic decision, beneficial for both sides, the Indian Union and the European Union. It is within a wider framework of a new strategic partnership, because we are a trade deal has been signed, but this trade deal is part of a new strategic partnership, which also encompasses security, defense, artificial intelligence, education exchange. So I think that it is a very good response from both Brussels and New Delhi to the current global challenges. I don't think it is the outcome of crazy Trump strategy, because we have been working a lot for many years on this, but certainly the world disorder organized, allow me to say it like that, by Donald Trump has accelerated, is one of the factors to judge positively this agreement between Europe and India, which is also from specifically the economic and trade perspective, in my view, very positive for both sides.
Sandra, I think you read my notes, because my next question to you was about that very issue, about the US and the EU relationship. Sandro, is this a way of broadening things out, of the EU stopping being so reliant on the United States?
Yeah, I mean, it is clear that we need to diversify. It is clear that we need to increase our autonomy and our independence, and that our autonomy and independence strategies relies also on new positive trade and strategic deals and agreement with other important partners in the world. So from this perspective, it is certainly a very important step ahead in the implementation of our new independent strategy. And then we're talking about India. India is a major global actor. India shares the same view as the European when it comes to multilateralism. India has the same interest as Europe in keeping an effective multilateralism. So I think that also from the geopolitical diplomatic point of view, there are huge opportunities to exploit for both the European and the Indians. And for us, we have launched a few years ago under the initiative of President Emmanuel Macron a new Indo-Pacific strategy. Also from this angle, I think that the partnership and the trade deal with India is going to help us a lot in the implementation of this strategy.
Sandro, for now, thank you. Bear with us, please. We'll get back to you in due course. Let's go to Trivandrum. Chirukadan Viramani, the Professor and Director of the Centre for Development Studies, is awaiting us. Sir, give us your take then. From an Indian perspective, what is in it for India?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think this is a great deal from India's perspective because European Union and India are natural trading partners for several reasons. First of all, there is a very high degree of complementarity in the trade patterns of the two blocks. What India exports are exactly what Europe imports. For example, India exports labor-intensive products like apparel, toys, footwear, leather, gems and jewelry, marine products, etc. These are exactly the products where India has a comparative advantage. And there is a huge market for these products in European Union, which is a very matured market with a lot of purchasing power. So that's a big gain for India. And similarly, what European Union exports are what India imports from the rest of the world, which includes high technology products, as well as automobile, luxury cars, wine, olive oil, consumer goods, beverages, etc. So European Union has that gain from this agreement. So it's a win-win situation. And another reason why I think it's a win-win situation is because it gives opportunities for both India and European Union to engage in global value chains. European Union can export high technology parts and components to India, and using India's vast labor force, we can produce manufactured products in India for the world market at a scale. So that gives benefits for both EU and India. And the final point that I want to say is that European Union is facing human resource shortages in some of the key sectors because of aging population. One is technology, high technology sector, healthcare, and hospitality. Here, there is another opportunity for both the blocks to get a win-win type of situation because India has a large and young skilled workforce, which is a significant resource. So mobility of India's professionals in the EU will be a great advantage for both the EU and the Indian population. I think in all these respects, it's a great deal and it's a win-win situation.
Professor, let me pause you there and thank you for that opening remark. Let's, before we go further on, listen to the words that we've been alluding to, those spoken by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Milestone, and we can build on that.
India and the European Union have signed a huge trade agreement. People around the world are calling it the mother of all deals. This agreement brings huge opportunities for India's 1.4 billion people and for millions of people across European countries.
Prime Minister of India. Let's come back to the studio. Kumar Ananda is here with us from the Franco-Indian Chamber of Commerce. I'm looking at the title in French and trying to translate it in my head at the same time, so that was the pause, excuse me. So far we've heard from Sandro and from the Professor, and it almost sounds like it's a press release about how this is a great deal. I'm not expecting you to contradict it, but do you see this as win-win completely, or do you see any pitfalls?
Absolutely delighted, Mark, to see this finally happening. I think it's been on the table for the last 2 decades. And as the president of the Chambre de Commerce Franco-Indienne in Paris, I think we are actually finally realizing that from France's perspective, a lot of things happened in the last few years between France and India. I hope this is going to speed up and then scale on what is being signed. Finally, when you look at what is being signed, it is Europe, 27 countries signing with India, 29 states. So India is as large as Europe. And of course, we're talking about a population that is 2 billion and a global trade that is 1/3, GDP that is 1/4 of the global. I think in terms of size, in terms of, let's say, the impact, it's massive. And of course, it comes in a context that is geopolitically of a message that is being put on the table. And having this to be signed on the 77th Republic Day of India, it has its meaning as well for India's narrative toward a developed country in the 100th independence year that will be in 2047. So there's a lot of meaning that carries, and we are actually in a situation where Europe has rushed to sign this deal, okay, because of the current context between Europe versus US, Europe versus China, Europe versus Russia, and also Europe versus Africa. And I would say that, of course, for Europe, it's possibly needed to sign this deal in urgency for multiple reasons, not just for geopolitical. I think what is going to happen in terms of, we heard about the shortages, but more than shortages, I think in terms of the economic transformation that is going to happen, with AI, with the energy demand that is going to be there, and demographic shift that is happening. And I think the deal comes in a time that is needed, and that we are realizing that it is needed to have a partner that will probably change the narrative that is being pushed to Europe for the last few months, few days, I would say. And this deal, of course, we are talking about a master agreement. And how we will execute it, actually parties will benefit. So it has had some safeguards. I think certain areas are protected. I think that when in debate, I think agri is a little bit protected. Some of the areas that is of critical for France and for Europe.
When you say protection, is that the kind of thing that, say, if we apply the same logic to the EU, Mercosur, South American deal, the things that the farmers are worried about? Are you talking about those kind of protections?
I think the farmers today, I think, both in India and in Europe, it's for them is very important that the deal doesn't bring additional challenges to them, and for both sides. I think for rice, for beef, I think for certain areas, it is not in the part of the deal. So mainly, I think processed food is on the table. I think agri-industry is on the table. But from a farmer perspective, it's protected. And I think we are talking about industry that is already dealing with India, that needed some cut. We're talking about no massive tariff cut, whereas the narrative on the last few months been about increasing tariff. Here we are decreasing tariff. So actually that benefit, I hope we're talking about 4 billion savings in terms of tariffs. That will help India and Europe to transform as well. I think India needs to fit to the compliance standards of Europe to be better partner, better export, and both, I think, in sustainability, in carbon, and in responding to the norms of Europe. I think for entering Europe, for India not being so far an export country, it's been always an import country. Indian consumer will benefit. I think when you see the tax cuts in spirits and wines and champagne, probably it's going to help the Indian consumer to have a better, including cars, and I think some of the industries will benefit.
Brilliant. Thank you for those remarks, Kumar. Let's get the kind of popular aspect and how this is being reported and how people are seeing it, and bring in Paridi Banot, journalist and broadcaster. Give us a sense of how Indians are seeing this, both via the media, people that you maybe in your own family. I mean, just feel free to share what you will. This idea of everybody having champagne and wine, surely that can't, I mean, can everybody afford that kind of thing? That's the question, isn't it?
Right. It is a big question. I mean, of course, there's a lot of eyes that are on the deal, and you've asked me to bring a more humanist perspective to it. So I'm gonna bring a small anecdote here. So I've woken up in the morning, and in my family group, the question that my uncles are asking is, so which European beer is good, and which is the European beer spirit is something that we should probably be looking at now. So that's a sort of excitement, I think, if you talk about the general public. On social media, there's a lot of conversation, so to speak, about the wines and beers and spirits. But also then, you talk about automobiles, which is something that India has tariffed really, really heavily in the past. So that stands to go down from 110% to somewhere about 10%, which again is a market that I think Indians are really excited about.
Will that make things more affordable for Indians?
It will definitely make automobiles more affordable that are coming in from Europe. However, there is a cap on this. So these are automobiles that are priced at over 15,000 euros. So anything above 15,000 euros is something that is going to be lucrative, and the prices of which are going to go down in terms of the automobile sector. So, as far as we talk about automobiles or spirits, that's something that I think the Indian consumer is really looking at. Other than that, of course, as far as the deal at large is concerned, there's one which is the numbers, which I think Mr. Anand and other economists on the panel are much better placed at explaining. But I think the optics of it as well, with the president of the European Commission and the European Council in India on Republic Day, Ursula von der Leyen wearing that beautiful, it's called a Bandh Gala, where we come from in India. So her wearing that, sort of going to the Republic Day celebrations. I think the optics of that have also really panned out well, I think, globally in terms of India and EU are concerned. And of course, all eyes are now going to be on how this pans out over the next 7 years. Because again, that's something that I think is important to touch upon, that this is not a tomorrow thing. This is something that's going to go out in a phased manner. So overall, I think, yes, consumers are looking forward, and we'll just have to see how this sort of pans out for both the EU and India.
Really, thank you. You mentioned Ursula von der Leyen. Let's take a listen then to the European Commission President speaking. Then after her, there'll be Antonio Costa, the, of course, European Council President.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people, two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion. A strong message that cooperation is the best answer to global challenges.
Today is a historic moment. We are opening a new chapter in our relations on trade, on security, on people-to-people ties. I'm the president of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen.
I never realised that. It's fantastic. So I learned two things. One about Costa there having that passport, but also that the phrase "mother of all deals" was said by Ursula von der Leyen. It was Paridi who pointed that out. Thank you so much for that precision. Let's bring in our final guest, Andrei Lusacru-Pietri, President of the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. How are you feeling about the deal?
Well, I won't repeat what Sandro Gozzi said on the fact that it's geopolitically obviously very important at the moment where I just came back from Davos, where basically everybody was turning around, all U.S. initiatives. It was Trump's speech and what's gone on in Greenland and now what may happen in Iran. And so the Europeans, even if their reaction was pretty solid last week, are basically like a boxer who is in the courts and who needs to fight back and shows that he still has some punches. The second thing, it's obviously important and that has not been said yet, that we bet on the next growth engine. I mean, clearly China, where the European Union put all its bets in the last 20 years is not necessarily anymore the open market that it used to be. Worse, it becomes our worst competitors on all the critical industries of Europe, be it automotive, be it machine tooling, etc. So it's a bet into the future. The one thing that I would like still to say, without being a party pooper here, is that it is so emblematic of the European vows. You mentioned it. The deal has been on since 2007. And for 15 years it was frozen. One, because probably the Europeans, and I think mainly is on their fault, were very much on standards, intrusive, and did not really respect the partners. And India was not self-confident enough. So this is also a symbol that India has come into the league of considering itself as a world power. And secondly, the Europeans did not have the vision for the next big thing. Now they remain tactical. So they remain, oh my goodness, now we have a problem with the US. Now we need to run. I mean, the optics, I think on that, the timing is terrible because that shows that we are purely reactive. Then we have to be also very cautious. When you look at the deal, first, it's not signed yet. It's not ratified yet. It has, and we see with Mercosur that it might still take a long time. When you look, it's an uneven deal. I fully understand why Prime Minister Modi is saying that it's a mother of all deals, because for India, it's a vast opening to the wealthiest market in the world, I mean 25% of global GDP. Especially for financial services, transaction, engineering, etc., where India excels increasingly. For the Europeans, there are still a lot of areas which are closed, be it in industry, be it in agriculture, that has been mentioned. So we have to be a bit careful. And the third thing where I'm a bit amazed is we are rushing forward on a deal that will bring our mutual trade from 130 to 200 billion. That is the objective in 2030. Without fixing our own. So Draghi is stalled, but Ms. von der Leyen is running from one trade deal to another. So unless we fix our own woes, that means competitiveness, energy costs, I mean, these deals risk backfiring because we will have a lot of entry of new players, and the Indian companies are increasingly competitive on the world market, have a lot of pressure on our own industry, without seeing that as a catalyst for change. So, in military terms, you would call that, make an assessment after the action, rétex in France. I think we're not learning from the past. We need to fix our internal market first. We need to fix our energy prices first. We need to fix our political system first. 20 years to do such a deal. And the president says, we made it. Well, it's good it happens. I think it goes in the right direction strategically. But I would not be very proud of our political system delivering a deal after 19 years in a world where we count in weeks and months.
Indeed, or sometimes in seconds and minutes. Andre, thank you. Let's bring in Sandro to answer perhaps some of those questions.
That's why I said I may be the party pooper on this panel, but I think it's important.
I've got a better one coming up, but I'll save that for a second. Sandro Gozzi, MEP of Renew. Thank you for being patient, sir. I know you're there in Brussels. I hope you've been able to follow what everyone's been saying. Andre there was just talking about Europe needs to get its house in order in terms of its internal market, in terms of how it runs its affairs. What would you say to that?
It is not a reaction. We are not being reactive. We have carefully and strategically prepared this new partnership with India. We have, for the last years, held a regular EU-India summit, which didn't happen in the past. Remember that at the beginning of 2025, the European Commission organized its first mission as a whole, all the commissioners, to Delhi. Consider that France has identified India as a key partner globally on artificial intelligence. Remember the Paris Summit, and it is forthcoming the New Delhi Summit on artificial intelligence. We have common interests, and we have been working on this common interest also on the multilateral scene. So I wouldn't say that it's reaction, and I wouldn't say that it is all because of Donald Trump. I think that Prime Minister Modi was very disappointed by Donald Trump, certainly. I think that Prime Minister Modi had high expectations. Remember what happened also during the Trump campaign, the big event, I think, in Texas with the thousands of Indian American citizens. I mean, all this, I don't say that belong completely to the past, but certainly belong to yesterday, because I think that also Prime Minister Modi realized that at the moment we cannot rely on the United States, but this has happened afterwards. We had already decided to, and this is why I mentioned before the Indo-Pacific strategy, we had already decided to identify India as a strategic partner. We have been talking tonight, rightly so, about the trade dimension, but there is, I repeat, a partnership, the security and strategic dimension. We want to cooperate more also on defense, including defense industry, and also bilaterally, for example, between France and India, but also between Italy and India. In the last years, as the situation, the exchange in the defense has improved. We want to work on the energy transition together. We want to work on connectivity. Remember the corridor from India through the Middle East till Europe. I already said artificial intelligence. So I think that this is absolutely positive. It is true. In parallel, of course, we have to implement and accelerate. And we, as Renew, we are at the forefront to fully implement the Draghi agenda. It is clear that we have to work on competitiveness. It is clear that we have to fill the gap on innovation, firstly by creating a functioning capital market union. All this is true, but this goes hand in hand because, I mean, all the issues are absolutely global, and I think that we have to implement a domestic agenda, and I'm not satisfied because in our assessment, only 11% of the Draghi proposal have been already implemented, and the main proposal of Draghi, which is boost investment, both public and private, with 800 billion euro per year. Well, we are still far from that, so this is absolutely true, and we work on that, but this goes hand in hand, I repeat. Our global strategy goes hand in hand with the implementation, the completion, the strengthening of our internal market. And then, last point, there are also two other issues that we haven't mentioned. We hope, we both Indian and European, we are very concerned with China. We are very concerned with China for the aggressive trade attitude of China, but also for the destabilizing action which China is pursuing, especially in Asia. And as European, we would like to accompany the Indian to be less dependent and therefore less cooperative with Russia, which is the other element which is addressed in the security and partnership document, and on which we understand we start from a very different position, but we would like, and we have expressed our will also at parliamentary level, that India a cooperative less with Russia, and especially take bolder stance on the issue of Ukraine. So, I mean, you see, there are many issues at stake. I repeat, domestic agenda and global agenda go, in my view, hand in hand.
Are you comfortable, given what you've just raised, the issue of Ukraine, the issue of Russia, are you comfortable then with this deal, comfortable doing the deal with India?
Well, I mean, I am comfortable. I think that it's a very good basis also to tackle thorny issues. And certainly when we talk about Russia, India energy dependence, I mean, long-standing military and defense cooperation between Russia and India, and before between the Soviet Union and India, you know, we start from very far. But we think that within this security partnership framework, we can positively talk to our Indian friends also on issues such as Russia and Ukraine, on which our position, as far, I mean, in my belief, our position are still too far, and we should work much more to promote a convergence on the issue of Ukraine and Russia.
Sandro, thank you as always very much indeed. Let's go straight to Trivandrum. and the Professor Viramani, who's waiting for us, obviously following what we've been talking about. Professor, great to have you with us. I'm wondering whether this going forward, India perhaps being asked by the EU to jettison former allies, clearly change its relationship with Russia in that sense, given the EU's support, almost unanimous support, barring Hungary, Slovakia, for its campaign to aid Ukraine to keep its independence. Will India handle that kind of change that might be part and parcel of what is required going forward? What's your sense on that? Given, of course, that Russia is a long-standing trade partner.
So India had a historically important relationship with Russia, and that is important from India's standpoint. And at the same time, I think India's position is that we have a equal type of relationship with other major countries in the world, including European Union, and there are a number of areas where increased cooperation is taking place with the European Union in recent times, because France, for example, is a major partner for India's defense requirement. India has done important defense-related deals with France. So similarly, other countries in recent times, India has a significant defense deal. India has signed also with Germany, and so India's relationship with the European Union is as important as its relationship with Russia. So from that point of view, I don't think there is any big confusion among the Indian leaders about what we need to do here. So I think in the current context, when there is a
Professor, would that be stopping dealing with Russia? That's the question, I think. I mean, for instance, India buying Russia's oil, in some way fueling the war effort against Ukraine. Would that mean that India would stop buying Russia's oil?
I don't think, because we have already reduced our oil imports from Russia in recent times. So we are diversifying both our relationship with different parts of the world in terms of various commodities, including oil. So I think the earlier initial imports that we used to do with from Russia, because Russia offered a big discount, that is no longer there. There is no such a big advantage for India now to buy oil any longer. So I think there's a diversification already happened in terms of oil purchase.
Professor, thank you for those observations. Thank you for answering that. Well, that was my tough question. The rest of it has all been about what's positive, but there is that issue about India buying Russia's oil and then Russia benefiting on that to fund the war effort. India not the only country concerned at all in that. And which one of you is going to say it to me? When's the EU going to stop buying Russia's oil as well? Because clearly there are EU countries that do the same. So, pot, kettle black and all that kind of thing. Let's bring in our man from the France-India Chamber of Commerce, Kunal Ananda, to talk more about this issue. Can the problems like this be overcome? Now, clearly you're going to say they can be, but it can't happen overnight, can it?
Yeah. Now, I think when you see the view from India on these issues, it's like you want to marry someone and you're asking that person, please forget all your friends. This person I don't want you to speak with, in this person I don't want to speak. That's
very
the
sweet
view,
way of putting it.
That's the view from India. You see, I've been discussing, they are my friends and they are partners for ages. Suddenly you're coming in the picture and guys, I want to marry you, but please forget your past. So for India, it will take time, but for India also, the view from India is that it is multilateral. It means that it's more than multilateral, it's a deal specific. So if I'm coming with you for a trade, it's only trade. Don't talk about the other things. So the way they are approaching a little bit, it's more like a procurement process globally. So I want to specifically deal with you for that specific thing, but don't mix everything. That's a bit the view from India. And I think it is because of the volatility of the relationship, and history has proved that any alliance is volatile. Any deal is volatile. Anything can change overnight. Anything can change over a tweet. So Yeah, India is conscious about that, that I want to first sign. So what we are talking about, a global deal. And the spirit of the deal is that it's a license to do deal, but it's no obligation to do deals. So the countries, the corporates are free to decide to do the deal or not if they want to take benefit at the corporate level. But there's no obligation for anyone to deal with India, to deal with the Indian corporate. So people will decide at the micro level. I believe people are intelligent enough to decide what is best for them. So I would say rather it's a positive thing that we are setting a stage for positive mindset and not to get fear that we'll be losing there, and then we don't know. It all depends on how the micro level it will happen, how the people will do the deals. And I think from Europe, seeing India, probably the perception has to change. We shouldn't do the same mistake that was probably done with China. It's not a supply chain logistic we are dealing with India, cost arbitrage and putting people. No, it's more about talent arbitrage, more about building something together stronger and not overcome the past globalization that was primarily built on logistics, supply chain, and cost arbitrage.
Let's put something to Andre, because it was Paridi who said someone in her family asked which was the best beer to buy. And I'm wondering whether, Andre, and Paridi, you can join in on this too. I'm wondering whether we could see a situation where something like, I don't know, Slovakian lager becomes an issue that creates a different kind of mindset, which makes, I don't know, creates a market where the Indians think, well, everything goes towards the EU now. Let's not be buying stuff from Russia. Let's not be doing this. Would that? I mean, I'm being fanciful now with this question, but as our man from the Chamber of Commerce was saying, is that change of mentality what we're going to see over the next few years? Is that going to help move towards that different position, that different mindset?
Well,
or am I just like whistling into the wind?
What strikes me is that indeed you see all the global powers, the US, China, and India now, who are extremely strategic and who don't see trade independent from geopolitics, from internal issues. They understand that they are, everybody is pursuing its own interest. And we seem to see that the EU, and that's a little bit, for me, I think the deal is very important, very strategic. Again, also, we didn't talk about that because India, and please do not take that as a critic, is a bit a swing nation. Like we have swing states it was a non-aligned nation. It went sometimes with Russia, sometimes with China, sometimes with the West, sometimes
independent spirit, yes? Right? Independent spirit.
So this is a way to kind of lock a stronger relationship. But it seems that the EU is still completely separating trade from geopolitical issues. The mistake it did for 20 years with China. And the mistake it's still thinking with the US, where we think, okay, we are allies, we have a military alliance, so let's separate that. And I think, Mark Carney said it very well in probably the most important speech of Davos last year. Let's stop the illusions. We are still in an illusion away. And the one thing I want to just mention to the MEP, to Sandro, no, it's not a reaction to Donald Trump too. But when was the India-EU deal reactivated after 15 years of freezing? In June 2022. Yeah. Surprise, surprise, 3 months after the Russia invasion of Ukraine. If that is not a reaction, I don't know how to call it. So what I want to say is, what I'm calling for, my hope, maybe I'm a little bit idealistic, is we need to have much more strategic thinking, much more long-term thinking, because everybody else is playing a long game. The Chinese are playing a long game, that's obvious. The Indians are playing a long game. And the US, despite all the drama we see, are playing a long game. We are playing a much more tactical game. And last point on oil, let's not forget that thing. I think pointing fingers is not very interesting. The deal is first with the Russians, is first very good for India itself because it's a buyer's market. So India negotiates very, very hard and very well for it. And unfortunately, and that's the illusion again, or the hypocrisy of the European, it's in the interest of the Europeans to keep low oil prices thanks to this buffer that India plays. So, next time we hear about the 19th package of sanctions to Russia, let's stop the illusions, because the Europeans are just showing that they're the weak link in the global chain of command.
Andre, thank you. Before I come to you, Paridi, Sandra, I know you want to speak, Sandra. Go ahead, very quickly, please, sir. Go ahead.
I mean, you are not too idealistic. You are too negative and pessimistic. Because in this case with India, we have done exactly what you wish the European Union would do every time. I repeat it again. It is not only a trade deal. It is a security and geopolitical partnership. Exactly what you are pleading for. And I wouldn't say that we are the only sleeping beauty in a world where everybody is acting on geopolitical issues. We are started finally to act also on geopolitical issues, and the paradox is that this partnership and deal, it is the evidence that we are on that track. And we have to continue to go along that track, and this is why it is so important, this partnership, because it goes beyond trade deal, what the European Union used to do in the past. Only trade deal, very often imbalanced trade deal. This time the trade deal is part of a broader strategy. And I think that, yes, of course, now everybody is quoting McCartney. I liked his speech. I met him several times. I don't think that the European Union is, especially some of the key partners in the European Union, are very far from the logic and policy strategy of McCartney. Certainly, we have now to accelerate the implementation of an agenda that must take fully into account the fact that we are in a new global disorder, and this global disorder is neither in the interest of New Delhi nor of Brussels. And this is why we have to cooperate with the new like-minded partner, because it's pretty new that we are a like-minded partner with India, but we are, and we have to go along that way.
Sandro, thank you very much indeed. Final comments of this debate will go to Paridi Bharat, Indian journalist and broadcaster, who gave us the sense of what the people are thinking. Now, there's talk here about playing the long game, but consumers, the people, they want something immediately. What do Indian people want from this deal? Give us a sense of that.
I think it's safe to say that as far as the Indians are concerned, we're of course looking to be able to export more to Europe, but also as far as European exports to India are concerned, that's also something that, like I said, people have their eyes on. Spirits, wines, automobile, olive oil, for one, actually is going to be reduced from 45% to 0%. So, all very interesting aspects. But I think a lot has been raised tonight over the course of the last 45 minutes by our panelists. And I think 2 or 3 things that I would just like to point out before we wrap up the debate for tonight. Very rightly so, Mr. Andre said that it was started in 2007. The talks for the free trade agreement itself went on till about 2013, reignited in 2022, and signed now after this new world, this new sort of era of President Trump's tariffs that has been ushered in. So one thing, of course, is that not a lot has changed in terms of what India wanted from the agreement and what the EU wanted over the past 2 decades. But something that has definitely changed is the geopolitical situation. So to be able to, I believe from where I see it, to be completely blindsiding that and seeing that geopolitics may not have a role to play, might somewhere not be, understanding the situation as a whole in terms of where India stands to benefit from the deal, but also where the European Union stands to benefit from the deal. I think in the end, the fact of the matter is that somewhere around 71 billion imports India got from the EU in 2025 and 49 billion for the EU. Both are looking to double it. And of course, the question is who will benefit, how they will benefit. But I'm going to hand over the stage to you so that you can wind this up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed, Paridi Bharat, Indian journalist and broadcaster. Thanks for that contribution. Thank you to Andre Lusacrud-Pietri of the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. Thank you to our man here from the France-India Chamber of Commerce, Kumar Ananda. Great to meet you, sir. Thanks to our guests from afar, Sandro Gozzi, MEP of Renew Europe. Thank you, Sandro. And thank you to Professor Churikadan Viramani from the Centre of Development Studies. Thank you all for watching. Stay with us here in France 24.